Hey guys. Sorry I'm
Hello.
late.
The link on the Moodle is still the calendar page
Oh,
file.
all right. Let me fix that. First
I
thing.
always find the link to the Zoom in the email. I just
Oh
search
yeah.
Inada and click
Neat.
on the first email.
Cool. Nice one. I know. Yeah, let me fix this because that's not that hard to fix. How's everybody doing today? So reminder, we don't have class on Monday. So we have Martin Luther King Day this Monday. And Zoom room. Okay, so we'll go edit and edit. And let's bust that link out here. Break it. And Zoom and Zoom.
Is there going to be a new Figma for today?
Yeah, that I also spaced that too. So yeah, here, let me get you guys started with that while I'm doing this. Where did that Figma go? I've got too many windows open. Some of the hazards. Recent motion graphics, Winter 3D. Boom. January 13th. Ooh. Alrighty. Let's make a cool polygon. Let's go. You know, if you want to get hyper into it, you can start to use Figma to do things you can import into 3D if you want to get meta about it. If you want to get meta, let's change the background too. All right. There you go. Whoa, 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 whoa. There you go. You can just alt drag and start dragging off some things and start to doodle around and get signed into that. And I'll get this link taken care of here. Participants, invite. Okay, that should work. EMDA. Link. Unbelievable. Link. Color. Okay, the Zoom room should be taken care of now, hopefully. Yeah, cool. Well, right on. All right. Well, we've been covering a bunch of stuff in class, and I want to give us a little goal to shoot for, kind of our first due date, so to speak, will be coming up on Wednesday, a week from today. And I want to go to the Figma page that we were just looking at, and we will make some notes. Okay. All right, so I just made a new page here. This modular city gray box due Wednesday. So let's, when you get signed in, just come back over to this, or you can just watch. I'll share the screen and you guys can just do it however you want to do it here. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see. So for Wednesday, January 20th, so a week from today, so I want you to find some references for laying out your city. And we're going to talk about this, and you can draw your own. You know, you can draw your own. Or you can, or use, let's say, well, I like that star. Let's just leave it at that for right now. Come back to that if we need to. And then So for Wednesday, what I want you guys to do is find a reference photo or a drawing or an image. You can draw your own if you're feeling sassy. And that might be the best thing to do. In a way, I usually end up doing that kind of a thing where I use reference kind of indirectly and then I create my own layout. But it's also a really good thing to practice just getting something that you know already looks cool as far as the layout. So we're not so concerned about the detail or about the particulars of it, the style of it, but we're really looking for the layout. So I want to emphasize that. So when you're looking for your references, think about, like, this is something you're going to kind of use as a baseline for making a scene yourself. So come up with kind of a reasonable scale, you know. So not like just a huge, like just ridiculously monumental cityscape or something like that. You know, not a vast, endless shot of a city, you know. So think about something that's kind of manageable. You can do a city shot, but make sure that it's somewhat kind of limited. So those images we looked at on Monday would be kind of good examples of that. So if I jump back to another page here, so we were looking at these. These I think are all pretty manageable. There's kind of a finite number of things. I mean, not so much Kowloon Walled City, but like even this, which is a pretty big shot, is doable. And it's not a bad idea to look at other 3D built environments because those tend to have that scale thing kind of built into them. Like if for something, that's why I use something like Undercity, which is a hyper limited, because it's limited, very had a severely limited poly count, face count for what they could do. So it's a good way to see how artists kind of make use of a limited budget, and then that kind of already puts you into a pretty realistic range of something you might be able to do right away. So, you know, but you don't have to use a 3D model. You could use a photo, that's fine. Or you can use a drawing. And I'll show you today. I think I've shown some of this work before, but like one of the go-to people that I look for, where I think I learned a lot when I started to look at his work. And I always get kind of inspired by it. And there was a lot of kind of overlap with some of my interests. So we'll take a look at that. And the idea is to use this to gray box out something roughly in the simplest direct possible way. So on Monday, we got into doing some sub-object modeling, pushing faces and verts and things around. And so for the gray box, you don't have to do any of that, or you can do a very limited amount of that. And you can just really work with simple primitives, and you can do a little bit of modeling, but I don't want you to go overboard necessarily in the gray box. If you get super inspired and you lay out an amazing gray box, you know, in the first day, and some of you might already have that, that's awesome. And then you can kind of capture that moment and then move on, and you could start building things out. But for the rest of us, I really want us to focus on having a complete gray box. And then, you know, I think we talked about that on the first day of class, but let me bring it out again. Here. Oh, where'd it go? Let's do it from here. So we looked at this as an example of a gray box. I'll just drop that in here. There we go. Yes. But we could just do a quick test. You also hear it referred to as white box. You know, you can find some examples pretty quickly of white boxing. You know, and these can get super elaborate, but I think something like this is a good example. You know, that's a nice example of Pinterest. Good God. Pinterest, you ruined the internet. That's pretty cool. Kind of, you can think about a level design, you know, if you are interested in that kind of thing. Oops. And then, you know, pretty soon you find someone who's like, I don't really like white boxing. I like to make some rough assets myself. That's fine too. You know, it's like you can start to, we're more interested in the idea. Don't worry about, oh, can I use this or that? The answer is yes. You can do whatever you want with it. But like, I strictly don't tend to use like literally white boxes when I do this step. You know, there's kind of more of a hybrid involved, but like, it's a nice way to think about blocking out a level design. I'm thinking about your camera shot. So we're going to talk about setting up our camera today. You know, I don't particularly like this as a shot because I think it's kind of boring in terms of the symmetry of it. And there's a lot of just kind of open space in a way. I don't mind open space per se, but like there's something kind of like, I mean, it kind of works as a level, but it might be interesting to see if you could break that up to make the space itself a little more interesting. You know, that's a little more interesting to me. You know, that's a pretty elaborate, that's not really a gray box anymore. That's more of like just the no textures thing. Same with this, but you can kind of see how if I were to just block it out, you know, so you can start looking around. Oh, this is kind of a cool example, you know. So, and you get to see kind of like the process of concepting and then this kind of proxy geometry. So there's not like a right way to do it. It's really this process kind of a thing. Like that's kind of cool. That's pretty neat. This is actually a cool image, because what they're doing here is they're drawing on top of this. And so you don't have to strictly do that. You could theoretically do that in something like grease pencil in Blender, but I think that might be a little fussy. You might just do a screen cap of it and then start to draw on it in something like Procreate or Photoshop or something. So, but I'll just throw that in there as an example. So we're just trying to develop the idea. So this is less about creating the perfect thing. We're really kind of about process here for this. So those are just a couple of quick examples there of that white box idea. But let's take a look at our pal Piranesi here. So in a way, Piranesi is nice to look at because he's doing this stuff in the 18th century, in the 1700s. Yeah, play Minecraft, exactly. Well, I mean, literally you could like use Minecraft as a prototype engine to generate prototypes because it's 3D. You know, you are literally gray boxing in Minecraft, except the things aren't gray. You know, you're just taking these boxes and making structures out of them. But this is a Piranesi. He's someone that I look at over and over and over again. And I think this is an earlier state of the print. One of the interesting things about his work is that he's working, like we said, in the 18th century, early 19th century, no, 18th century. And he's using this intaglio process, this etching process. So we have a lot of the different states of his print. So we get to see the early outliney state, then he would do a proof of it, keep drawing on it, do a proof of it. So he was working in this iterative process, which is what we do in 3D. But he was doing this in 2D, but he was doing this, it's back when, you know, you had to learn how to do architectural drawing all in your head, and there was no Blender. So it was, but you can kind of see how this is a nice prototype kind of example. Like this to me is a nice example of kind of a white boxed space where the space is really clearly defined. We really get a sense of how these things are working in terms of the scale relative to the camera. The film camera had not been invented yet. So, you know, the vantage point of the artist back in this day, but essentially it's a camera, you know, and even the aspect ratio is kind of camera-like. So this is what we're thinking about when we're gray boxing. We're thinking about what's it going to look like from my camera's perspective. And we'll talk about how to set up the camera in just a minute here. So I actually just used this for this exact purpose where I said, let me get started with, I'll use Piranesi because I like the sense of scale in his work. And I'll throw a couple more Piranesis in here. I was just doing some research at lunchtime on him. And I want you guys to just get in the habit of doing this. So that's going to be part of the presentation that you'll do on Wednesdays to show us the stuff you've been looking at. It doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. In fact, it'd be better if you had many things you were looking at and say, yeah, I kind of settled on something like this. So where did that go? 3D. Okay, I've got some Piranesi in here. Let's try. Where'd it go? There it is. So like I said, it's interesting to think about him as an early 3D artist, you know, not particularly early, but he's working in fantasy. He also did like study. So this is a good example of kind of a reverse engineering. So this is a view of the Colosseum in Rome that he did. And he couldn't have this vantage point. He had to conceptualize this in his mind, you know, which is kind of cool to think about, that he had to think about how this was done. But this was great because you really see this idea of these repeated elements. And since he was seeing the Colosseum as a ruin, you know, he's got these ruined, busted up things, which again is a nice example for us. But you might, in conceptualizing this, you say, before I get into wrecking this, let me just think about what this might look like ahead of time. And again, I'm not concerned about the details. You're just kind of trying to get the basic idea. Now, I wouldn't think this is, to me, is not a great example of a white box, but it would be a good example of a kind of a way to help you think about an element that might show up in your white box. And so one of the things that the white box or gray box enables us to do is it lets us kind of make decisions about where we're going to spend our time doing detailed modeling. So if we don't need detailed modeling, we don't waste our time on it. But if we do, we've got to make that detail and that time count and have a payoff in terms of the final image. This is one that I was looking at today that I liked a lot. And, you know, feel free for you to use some Piranesi if you want. I don't own the rights. And I think he's someone that gets used a lot by concept artists. So we're not the only ones looking at Piranesi, but this is a great example of, like, you can really see this kind of how some objects are really foregrounded, and you can see that there would be some detail here. This archway, this framing device, and you can see there's a really clear sense of foreground, midground, background in this. So I'm going to throw that in there as a note on this. So yeah, let's say yeah, so that's something that you could really be thinking about. So because we're doing a 2D version of a 3D setup, and so that means we get certain things, if they're closer to us, appear larger, and vice versa. We all know that, but that can really be an effective way of kind of setting up a composition. I think I got a few more in here. Oh, this is great too. Oh yeah, here's a more, I think, no, it's the same one. All right. This is pretty hip. That's pretty great. You can see the human figures in here for scale. So like our base mesh Bravo guy could, you know, be sitting in here with these, and you can see them. Kind of helps establish the scale. And yeah, I wouldn't worry about all the detail, but you can kind of think, oh yeah, down the line, you know, in a week or two, I can probably get into some of that stuff, adding things like foliage or, you know, battle damage or wear and tear, you know, the ravages of time, however you want to refer to it. We can get into that stuff too, more. But that will kind of come later, and that's more of the detail stuff. So in white boxing this out, I might just be thinking like, you know, block, 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 kind of getting this, and then kind of trying to figure the camera out. So this to me is a lot more interesting, even though it's kind of a symmetrical composition. There's enough breaking up the symmetry that it becomes interesting. So the symmetry is kind of this big arch, and then we have this passageway, but then, you know, this side is different from this side. So, and then the way it's broken up does a nice job of breaking that symmetry. So this to me is a more interesting example than just that very kind of like empty room, you know, which is like, so yeah, then there are these things kind of providing different focal points and things like that. So cool. Any questions? And that's in the Figma, so you guys can look at this anytime. These notes are online, accessible through Moodle via the Figma page. So any questions about that before we jump over into Blender land? All right. Toaster strudels. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool. So, all right, well, let's jump over to Blender. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff today. Like we said, this first couple of weeks, we're just really giving you a lot of tools. And you don't worry about using them all right away, especially in the white box. But it's a continuum. You're not doing it wrong, whatever way you choose to do. It's a way just to start generating ideas. And you might do several white boxes, gray boxes. I keep going back and forth between those terms. I hear them both. So, have fun with it. One of the things that I'd be really careful about with gray boxing is like, try to almost like set a timer for yourself. Like, so you can check in. So if in 5 minutes, I don't have something really going on, then I'm probably doing it wrong. Like it means I've probably gotten caught up in minute detail, or I'm getting overly caught up in trying to get it exactly right when really you don't need to. And then maybe you have another timer and it goes off like 15, 20 minutes later. It's like, well, I should have a really good sense of what's going on by that time. It shouldn't take you a long time to do. So it just catches yourself. You don't want to be like, oh, I spent 8 hours on this, that's kind of not really the point. For an elaborate gray box, yeah, you could spend that much time on it, but I wouldn't do that right away. I would make this kind of down and dirty fast. And then you can spend another 20 minutes on it if you're making progress, or another 20 minutes. You can kind of build it, but don't just go without really stepping back and kind of assessing what it's looking like, and try to force yourself a little bit to pick up the pace and block things in. And especially if you feel like, oh, it doesn't look good, it's like, that's okay. Just keep blocking. You can go back in and refine it later. And I'll try to demonstrate, maybe if we have time today, I don't know if we will, but like kind of how you can go, we probably won't get there today, but on Wednesday, we'll try to look at like, how can we go from gray boxing into more detail, and how do we really use gray box really practically as a working method. Right. So Juliana said, I love it. I'm a perfectionist. That's going to be hard. And I am too. And a perfectionist doesn't necessarily mean it's like someone's like, it's got to be perfect. I'm really uptight. It's not necessarily that. It can be like almost like a neurotic thing. This is the way that I am about it, where I'm like, this thing's kind of I gotta move it over a little bit. I'm like, it's kind of fussy. And then it's like, dude, like, why? Like, literally no one can see this. Like, no one can care. And I keep in my studio. Oh no, where'd it go? It keeps showing up. So I built the studio, about 10 years ago now for myself, and like in my backyard. And I'd never really built anything like this before. So my friends came and helped me out a lot, who were builders. So, but I would be, in there doing these jobs. Like I was putting the little floorboards down, the flooring, and I was like putting them down, and I was like, oh, damn it. I scratched a little piece of the floor off. Like it was like this veneer. It's this cheap flooring, but like, and I was like, oh, but I'm really bummed out. And then I said, okay, I'm glad I noticed this, because this is literally insane. Like, this is like, I guarantee that no one will ever see this. Not that I even cared. Like, who the hell's coming out to my studio that much? Like, not many people, right? But like, or even that I won't see it, that I would forget this is here. But I want to remember this as an example of like really misplaced precision on my part. And so I would keep this little piece around. It's around anyway. And sure enough, it's off in the corner. It's buried. I mean, you would never see it. But it's a good reminder of like, that's focusing on the wrong thing. And we all tend to do that. And then I just want it to not look bad. Exactly. But the problem is when we start to say, oh, I don't want this to look bad, is like, it kind of has to look bad. And the best example of that is to watch other people work, like another 3D modeler. And you'll see they go blah, 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 blah. And the more that I watched other people work, the more I went, oh my God, they do it in such a way that they go from the general to the specific. They go from rough to smooth. They go from, that this is the way to do it. And so it looks the way that it does at each state. It's kind of like saying, if you were cooking and you're like, you were making cookies, and you like mixed the flour and the sugar together, and you're like, oh my God, these cookies suck. Right? Because like, well, yeah, because they're not done, so don't eat them yet. Like, and so for us, the eating is like assessing the work too hard. Like, you don't want to assess it too hard when you're in the early stages. You want to kind of let it. It's like, okay, well, put the other stuff in there. Add the chocolate chips. That'll be good. Add the whatever the hell else you put in their eggs or whatever. And then again, people are like, oh, this cookie dough tastes pretty good. It's like, yeah, it'll be better. Let's cook it. But like it does, everything kind of takes its own step, its own time. And as like we've said, like as a consumer of that thing, I'm like, yeah, give me that cookie. You know, that was delicious. But when I'm making it, I have to have a very different approach. So yeah. So understand that the only way to get it done is to have at some point, you're going to have a bowl that's just like flour and sugar and butter in it. That's just the way it is. That's like, and so it's not going to look great right away. But you'll come to appreciate what looking good means. And I think when we're just consumers, we tend to hit the focus on the wrong thing. But when we're makers, we learn to focus on, oh yeah, this is coming along nicely. You know, this is looking good. So we want to kind of have that develop that positive eye towards our own work. So it's fun. Cool. Alrighty. Okay, so what's this? This is something I was just working on. Bevels. Oh, just apropos of stuff. You can see how this is basically a box that's been extruded. But I've started to do what's called beveling the edges. And beveling means to kind of add a little bit of curve to, or just to break up the hard, perfect 90-degree corners. Because
I don't think you're sharing the screen, Matt.
Oh, that would help. Yeah, it doesn't say share screen. That's why. So yeah, so these are just some little things I was playing around with. I was playing around with beveling, and I'll show you the difference here. So if I start off with our friend, the default cube, oops, cube, I'll pull this over here. So just look at the default cube. So you've probably never seen anything like this default cube before in real life. The more you look at it, the stranger it looks. When you compare it to something like this, where we've beveled the cube, that this looks a lot more kind of realistic. If we were to like slap a decal on here and make this look like a cardboard box in a game, and the older the games are, the more you'll see things being totally sharp. Like Minecraft, you would see this, the default cube would show up in Minecraft because Minecraft is deliberately has this low poly aesthetic. But in most, if you play any type of modern 3D game that's got even vaguely kind of a photorealistic look, and even if it's not photorealistic, even if it's just like kind of cool looking, you'll tend to see lots and lots and lots of beveling where edges come together, because edges are never perfectly 90 degrees unless you're like cutting diamonds or something like that, you know. So and they don't have to be this much of a bevel, but even some slight bevel will help. So you can see I was just going through and beveling the different pieces of this to add some detail. I didn't bevel everything, you know, I didn't. So, and we'll talk about beveling and how you can use it. So but that's an example. I'm notorious for not beveling stuff because I forget all the time, and I wouldn't worry about it in white box, certainly. So that's a great example, so that when we're white boxing, we're not necessarily doing that. It's like, well, don't worry about that until you've got the proportions right that you want, that you've got the layout right, then you can worry about it. But I just wanted to kind of point it out there that we're dealing with all this stuff together. But I wanted to look at what was it? Well, we'll come back to that. Yeah, never mind. All right. So that's what that was. Just wanted to point that out. And we're going to use beveling in a really strange and twisted way, in a way that's kind of cool in Blender 2.9 that I just found out about yesterday with Sean. Sean Oskay's class, we were teaching together. I was like, what? No way. And I remember seeing this, but it didn't register in me. And then he used it in a way, and you guys will get a kick out of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start off with something new. So we're going to talk about cameras and how to manipulate the camera. And I think what I'd like to do is maybe I'll kind of demo doing kind of white boxing this out a little bit, how I might go about it. Doing that. Cool. Let's see, I think I can, let's see if I can get fancy here. I want that. No. Since I'm not using the timeline. Let's see. File browser. Open. Yeah, let's use this. So you can see it as we work. Yeah. All right. So, so looking at this, and control spacebar lets us maximize a window, and control spacebar brings it back. So looking at our Piranesi for a second, let's kind of break it down so we can kind of think about how we're going to go from rough, and we're going to look at the big picture. We're going to think about foreground, midground, and background, and then we're going to kind of develop it from there. So what's happening in the foreground? We have this big kind of element over here, this thing here, and maybe we can call this wall here and this column over here. I would consider these foreground elements. So these, to me, it's almost, you can draw like a U shape here, and that would be kind of like this framing device. So we could start off maybe thinking about this. And our camera, someone tell us, where is our camera located here? Is it high or is it low?
I'd say it's pretty low.
Yeah, totally. And why would you say that?
Based on the focal point of the picture, it's kind of like looking up at the whole scene, and because of the forced perspective, you can tell that it's a low angle.
And technically, the way we can tell in a perspective shot is where an angle that is at an angle, but we talked about this before, like when we're talking about isometric and orthographic and all that kind of stuff. When we're looking at something that is, it looks like it's slanted when we know it's not. So we know that these stairs are not slanted in this direction. They're perfectly 90 degrees, but they appear to be slanted. Like, and I'm talking about like this angle here appears to be slanted because of perspective. But if we can find a place on these stairs, maybe it's at the bottom, where it basically reads kind of the way it should read, which is a perfectly horizontal line, that would be our eye level. So eye level is where those angles become horizontal. That's eye level. And that's why you only see that at a particular point when you're in 2-point perspective. So we can see as we go up from here, these angles are getting more extreme. So this angle up here on this beam, which is parallel to the stairs, this angle is more extreme than this angle. This angle at the top of the stairs is less extreme than the angle right here. And in fact, it's almost horizontal here. So I would say that our eye level is right, but this is still at an angle. So our eye level is, and you can see the way these, it's probably right around here. maybe about the level of these figures here, more or less. You know, so our eye level is about here. So yeah, the camera's low here. So we can think about that our camera, when we position our camera, it's going to be low relative to the objects in the scene and relative to the ground plane. In fact, that's another way to think about this is, do we really even see the ground here, the ground plane? We don't really. And that means we're almost like, you know, it's almost like we're in a trench or something and sticking our head up out of we're that low. You hear the term worm's eye view, you know, versus a bird's eye view. So you can think about how low that can go. And so we're not concerned about the exact technical layout of this, but we just want to kind of use it roughly. But that's a good thing to think about. Where is the camera? Is it high or is it low? All right, cool. And then it's important to remember that in 3D, all of these objects are going to be just boxes. They're not going to have these weird slants and angles to them. They're just going to all be basically boxes. So let's start off. Let's maybe make this, think about this wall, or we can use the default cube. Let's say, but before we do any of that, let's set up our camera. So okay, so we're on Blender. Okay, so let's maximize this. All right, so right now, you can see how this red line is at an angle going left to right. That's kind of slanted down like that. That's because this is below our eye level. And we can't see where the perspective camera is. So the first thing is we're going to jump. This is our actual camera object here. And in the outliner, it shows up as camera. We can make more cameras, but we'll just go ahead and use the default camera. That's fine. And I'm going to set this camera up to orient so that the x-axis, which is red, is left to right here, and the y-axis is moving into space, and the z-axis, of course, is up and down. So I'm going to drag this camera over here, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to zip to the top view by hitting numpad 7, and let's see, or I'll get it in the front view maybe. So numpad 1, and so the first thing I'll do is I'll lower this camera down on the Z. Whoops. So I select the camera, I go GZ, and I just move it down. And let's have red be our ground plane. Now I'm going to rotate the camera so it's looking up. Rotate it on Y. Look it up. All right, this is getting weird. And like you can tell, it's like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And like if I look through the camera view, which is numpad 0, it's going to look all skewy and crazy. It's like, what? It's like, you know, the Batman TV show. So instead of doing it that way, because that's going to drive me crazy, I'm going to go back out here, and I'm going to undo those camera moves. And maybe I'll just move, I will go ahead and move it down on Z, just kind of drag it down here. That's fine. All right, from then on, the way that I will position my cameras most of the time is I'll hit N, and that opens up our number menu over here. And I'm going to go to view. There are all these different tabs here on the side. So I'm going to choose view, and I'm going to hit this lock camera to view. So what that's going to enable me to do is I can go over here, hit numpad 0 again, and come back to the camera view. Is that now I can just manipulate the view like I would normally, but check it out. My camera is actually changing its vantage point as I do this. Because the default, when this box is not checked, is as soon as I start to make a move like that, it jumps back to perspective view. But with this checked, and if we're in the camera view, now we're actually moving the camera itself, and we can adjust it. So the camera here is, it's going to be probably at an angle kind of like that. And yeah, so you can see this angle is moving this way. So that means that's above our eye level. And down here, the angle is moving the opposite way. It's moving in the other direction. That means it's below our eye level. Because we know that the box, these are parallel, right? So when we look at it in the front view, duh. But we're starting to understand something about the way perspective works. And the same thing here. This angle is going up. This is above our eye level. This angle is going the opposite direction. it's below our eye level. So if I make a copy of the cube, it's the same cube, right? But now, because all of this is above our eye level, sure enough, this angle is going this direction, the same as this one. This angle is also going that direction. This angle is more extreme than that angle. As we add cubes into our scene and we keep stacking them, these angles become, this angle is more extreme than this angle. And you can really see it here. This angle is way more extreme than this angle. So the closer a parallel line is to our eye, the closer it gets to horizontal. And the farther away it is, the more extreme the angle gets. So it would never hit 90 degrees, but it would get a lot closer to 90 degrees. And so same thing, if we take this and make some cubes down here, this is below our eye level, below our eye level, below our eye level. So they're all going in that same direction. And they're converging. The ones that are above our eye level and the ones that are below our eye level are converging at a point in space that would be the horizon line. So that's kind of 2D perspective not 2D perspective, 2-point perspective in a nutshell there. And all of these lines would be converging to another. And so what's cool is that if you were to go out and track the point where these two lines intersected, they would be on the same horizontal line as where these lines intersect. So that's the horizon line. And that if you connected those 2 points, you would have the horizon line. So this is a great way to learn about, just to get better with your freehand drawing, is to learn about the laws of perspective this way, because you can really see it in this. Now, the camera that we're looking through here, if we want to, right now we're just seeing a little piece of it, which is actually kind of nice because it lets us see the rest of the scene. But if I want to maximize this view to fill the screen more, I can go here to, and I'm going to close this by hitting N. And I'm going to make sure I uncheck this because I don't want to be moving the camera around accidentally. So if I go here to bleep, 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 if I want to maximize this, I can say view frame all. Oops, in the camera view. Yeah. Or I can just zoom in like this. But I thought there was a shortcut that would do that for me. Huh, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, you can just kind of zoom in like this. That's fine. That for right now. That's period. No. Oh, I'm on a Mac, so it might be a Windows thing, whatever. All right. So here's our view. I'm going to delete these other cubes. Oops. Oh, and just to be cool, I'm going to remember to come up here and turn this to random so we can get those cool random colors. It's kind of fun. All right, so back to our camera view. So this camera, I'm thinking like, okay, this is not the same aspect ratio as our camera. So the Piranesi drawing is, if we look at these side by side here, you can see how this rectangle is not the same shape as this rectangle of our camera, that our camera view is flatter and more is wider than this is, and this is taller than the camera. So we're not going to get an exact match here, but basically it looks like if this is going to be our default cube, is going to be this pot kind of thing here, this cylinder kind of pedestal thing over here. It's going to be, we want to think about how much of this rectangle does this shape take up. And so if we were to divide this in half, I wish I could kind of do this. I'll use the annotate tool just for right now. So I'll say, well, it's basically going to look like, I can do annotations here. So if I divide this in half and divide it in half roughly this way, I could say, well, this, I can't use my annotate over here, I don't think, which kind of sucks. But so if I go half and half, this would be in the lower left-hand quadrant. So what I could do is go back to my camera. And now I'm going to zoom back. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to get that size about right. And then I'm going to kind of push it down here. I'm not moving the object, I'm moving the camera with this lock camera view. So it's something like that. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'll turn that off and I'll turn this off. And now I'm going to think, now I know that these two things are parallel to each other. So if I want to make a copy of this thing, Shift D, I want to move it on the Y axis back and forth. And I'm going to get rid of this annotation because that's confusing now. And I can just get the eraser, annotate eraser, and just erase those. Okay, so, and then I can see, all right, well, what happens if I move this over on X, kind of move it over there. So I'm looking at this edge here. So I'm looking at the negative space between this and this. And again, I'm not trying to be precise. I'm eyeballing it. And so I am what am I doing? I am looking for this negative space. And then I'm going to take this and I'm just going to go ahead and you can see this is up higher. So that means that wall, I think this wall is actually taller than this thing here. So making sure that I don't have camera to view, I'm going to just jump back out here, tab into edit mode, grab the top face and go G, Z and pull this up a little bit. And once I've got that selected, I can go back and I can kind of do the adjustments here. Something like that. Yeah, it's not that much. And then I can pull it out this way. Oops, not Y, X. And then I'm going to go ahead and say that this just goes back and we get, this would be kind of an L. But maybe before I do that, I'm going to get this, I'm going to add this column in here. And instead of trying to extrude it out of here or anything like that, I'm just going to go and add this to, just add another cube here. So maybe I'll just, you know, to kind of make my life a little bit easier, I can go here, select the top face, and then use my snap to snap cursor to select it, and it snaps it. So it'll be on top of this. And that's not going to really help me that much. That's okay, whatever. Add the cube. Oh, but I'm in edit mode. I want to add this in object mode. So add mesh cube and GZ, snap it up. Okay, and then X. So then I've got this beam that's coming in, and this goes about halfway across. So it's going to go, and again, really the proportions are different. So this wouldn't, we have a lot of this would be cropped out because really it would be coming down here. I could go ahead and just add that, you know, maybe I'll just come over here and, oops, Daisy. No. Okay. I just want to select this face, snap, cursor is selected, and add a cube. And, oh, I don't want to do it in edit mode. So undo, tab the object mode, add a cube, slide this up like that, and then scale it. What's going on here? That's weird. Huh, that's quirky. I'll try this. Where's my scale? That's bizarre. Oh, no worries. We know how to get around that problem, don't we? Whoa. I'm sliding off in my other monitor. That's what's happening here. There we go. So you can kind of see how that, something like that, you know, whatever, we can adjust our shot. We're just using this as a rough block in. So if we really want to get this more established, we would probably just change our composition, you know, somewhat. Like maybe we would take everything and move it down a little bit. Oh, I mean, I didn't know it's still. What is going on?
Oh, I have a question about this. Do we have to turn it in for today?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll look at these on Wednesday. So you got a week to play around with these. Yeah. But this is just the rough block in. So then we've also got this thing over here. So that looks like this looks like it's a little bit closer to us. This cylinder, oh, I'm looking, you guys can't see what I'm looking at. This cylinder here looks like it's a little closer to us, really. And then this is between this and this. So I'll just kind of go duplicate on Y. Move it in something like that. And then move it on X. Back here, and then same thing. And that goes all the way off too. So we have something kind of like that. And then maybe I'll adjust the camera a little bit. Huh. There we go. And then we've got this kind of wall thing coming off here. I don't even know. That's kind of weird. All right. Fine. Did something to my scale. Hit some kind of god awful shortcut. And I know these are kind of wonky because they're out of view, but you get the idea. So you can see how we started to kind of white box this scene in, and yeah, it's coming along. You know, we're not being too precise. We're not spending a whole ton of time on it. So it's just meant to kind of get us started down the road. Now I want to look at these steps. So these steps are cool, and you can kind of see how we can simplify this down into basically just an angled wedge kind of a shape here. So this is going to be our mid ground. So I'm going to kind of see what I can do with these steps here. So, and I think like this part here, this block here, this probably goes quite a bit deeper. Oops. Oh, I separated it. Nice. So let's try to get this down here. So let's assume that, let's make another block. And move it back here, somewhere about there. And something like that. And I don't know how far this goes. So let's guess right now. So the steps look like they don't go quite that far over. So they're kind of coming down to about maybe here, roughly. I'll say about there. Okay. And now I'm going to lower this down. I'll raise it up. I'll raise it up to the height of the stair. Then I'll get the thickness down. So the stairs go back about 2. Let's see. There. Again, I don't know. I'm roughing this down. Now, about this wedge. So what I could do right now is I'm going to select this edge, just move it down on Z. So let's see what that looks like. So that looks pretty good. And then this would come back. Oops. Do an extrusion. We don't really see that, so we'll just pull it back, gives us a platform. But we know that this building is going to be set on, I keep showing you stuff you can't see. These buildings back here are all sitting on top of these stairs. So these buildings back here are sitting on top of our stairs. So we want to kind of give ourselves a nice big platform here. And then seems kind of narrow. I'm going to make this wider. I think actually these stairs are going to keep going this way. That's what I think. Yeah. So not everything has to match up, because if it looks good, it is good. This is what's cool about this, is like it's fantasy. So, and whenever you're doing a shot, you can cheat things all the time. Like think about doing a set design for a stage. Of course, nothing is really there. It's all fake. So you're trying to create the illusion of this kind of solid thing. So, all right. So, and then I'm also just going to try to get this wall element here, which is really weird. And then, so, but let's, if we think about it, that wall element, if we did our, you know, we said, here's the halfway line here, and here's the halfway line here. This wall element is really about halfway through this upper quadrant. And so it starts right about here, and then it goes over. So I'm just going to add a new cube. Object mode. So one thing that's coming up as I'm doing this is I'm constantly forgetting to switch back to object mode. So I'm sure you guys will be having fun with that, but whatever. It's always fixable if you forget. So I'll do something like that. It looks like that wall kind of starts right around where the stairs start. So right about there. So really it should be back more here. So the stair is probably going to be a little bigger. Yeah, and if you look at where this angle comes up relative to the edge of the cylinder here, these stairs probably need to go back farther. So I'll grab the stairs, go into edit mode, edge mode, grab the front edge and scooch it back on Y. It's really more like that. Yeah, I'm not going to get too uptight about it. So this greenish thing here is the wall. Then we're gonna have this tower here. So, so Oh, so if we wanted to, we could actually make our proportions of our render match this. This is kind of a standard film editing proportion, 1920 by 1080 or video for TV. What we could do is say, well, we don't have to be stuck in that. I can go over here to the render settings here and change this ratio to be something more approaching this. So it would be higher on Y. So maybe this goes up to 1500 or something, you know, and then that gives us a more, that actually feels better to me. And so since we're not doing this for film, go ahead and change the aspect ratio if you want. So that would give us a better look here. So now I'm going to adjust my camera to settle back down and match that a little bit better. You know, it's not perfect. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going to be going like, oh, your camera view doesn't work. We're just kind of trying to get a rough layout, because you're not trying to just duplicate this thing perfectly. That looks a lot better, actually. That's kind of the point, you know, like what Juliana was saying. It's like, oh, I want it to look perfect. It's like, well, it's not gonna at first, but then it'll get better the more you do, the more you put into it. So all right, whoops.
It's like, yeah, you're not gonna expect a sketch to look perfect right off the bat. A sketch is there so you can improve on it and add detail to it as you go.
Yeah,
and that's what this is, a sketch essentially.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. That's exactly what it is. It's a sketch.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. You're just building it out. Yeah, that's awesome. So cool. So we're just kind of roughing it out. And so we haven't done really much modeling. I guess we worked on the steps a little bit, but the point is you can kind of see we're not getting stuck on the modeling. We're not letting ourselves get stuck, because we might easily burn, like, let's say if we just were focused on making this part of the wall, that might take us like 8 hours, especially when we don't know what we're doing. You know what I mean? So like, we're like, let's not get too crazy with that. We can add it in as we go. We can add the detail in as we go. And we might want to change it. We don't want to, you know. But the main thing we're getting is we're going to get a nice sense of space and a nice sense of layout from this. So cool. That's a nice kind of start to the process of greyboxing. Then you can see how this is coming along. I guess I'll just add a little bit more. I'll add this part here. So that's just going to be a box. Again, object mode, add cube, G, Y, G, X, scale. Oh, scale's not working. Ha ha ha. Not sure why. I'll just do it. I'll do this S3. No. I somehow turned off. I must have locked my scale thing somewhere. Whatever. I'm sure it was something silly that I did, but I'll do it this way. Get it close. Sure. G, whoops. G. So that's a little off to me, but the slope of the stairs, I think, is a little off now that we've made these corrections. So, and like I said, I'm not too worried about it, but, and then we have another one of those elements over here So we'll duplicate this and just slide it over on X. So it's actually kind of obscured by this. So there we go. And I'll just kind of block this last part out quickly, and then we're done basically with our white box. So I'll duplicate this and maybe bring it back here a little bit. And pull it out here. And then duplicate that. And, oh, I duplicated just the face. Good job. Duplicate the object. That's better. Let's pull these over. Cool. All right, so that looks pretty good. You know, it's not perfect, but we don't care about it being perfect. It gives us a good start, and we can, you know, make adjustments to it. And we might want to make some pretty big changes to this too. We might not want it to be exactly like that. We might, but so the point isn't to exactly mimic something. It's just to give yourself a start on that layout. So again, if you think about, where is it? There we go. Something like our where'd it go? Something like this. You know, this would be a good one to block out. You know, it's not too many elements in here. Again, here the camera's high. And so we can tell because all of these angles are below are going this way. And so we're actually above everything. Nothing's going to be slanted up the other way. Everything is going to be slanting down because we're above everything in this scene. So the camera would go way up high. It's kind of the opposite of the Piranesi. And, you know, you might want more or less accuracy, like, what about this? Yeah, again, high camera here. But a finite number of elements you can kind of see. This is actually a little bit more complicated than the Piranesi almost, but not that much crazier. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look that complicated to model. I mean, you can easily break down the sketch into cylinders, some long cubes in the back,
Yep.
Rectangles,
Yep.
even.
Totally. It's not that complicated. It really isn't. It's really getting, but it's complicated if you just try to make that stuff without really having a plan or having a sense of how it lays out in space. Once you have it laid out in space, it gets really fun to model. It's really stressful when you're modeling something and you don't know where it's supposed to go or what it's supposed to do in the scene. Then you're like, I've got to make this thing perfect. And that's where that perfectionism can kind of shut us down. Or it's like, if I had a scene that had a desk in it, like my computer desk, and it had like this stylus in it, I wouldn't want to be like spending, 6 hours creating this really amazing, like, I got to get the ring in here, and the little button, and like, I've got to, no, it's like, if you're going to see this thing way back here as part of a really complicated scene, you can damn well make it a box and just leave it, and color it black and call it good. You know what I mean? So we don't necessarily have to model everything, but if you just start modeling something, oh no, so this is the gray box actually makes our modeling job easier, because then we know what the purpose of the model is that we're making. So that's really cool. It really gets to be fun once we can kind of work from a gray box. So actually, we can leave it there as far as the technical stuff. I don't think I'll go into like the stair building and all that, because we can just really use this kind of gray box idea. I'd rather have you guys kind of focus on that stuff, and enough to be able to go back into Blender, and start to make little adjustments. Like, I either make like this kind of mansard roof thing here. I can either just extrude it and pull that up, or I can just make a separate object and stick it on top of that. So I could, maybe I'll just make it. I won't even try to extrude it. I'll just go. Add a cube up here, and then we'll just go. Okay, so let's just do something like this. Yeah, that scale thing is really bumming me out. Sure, I did something funny to it. Oops. Yeah, it lets me scale in edit mode, but not in object mode. That's all right. Whatever, it doesn't fit perfectly, but it's gonna something like that for right now. Let's check that out. So, getting there. Scale down, yeah. Like we said, we're not trying to make it perfect, so don't get too crazy. In fact, that looks, I'm not even sure what that is. That's weird. It's kind of interesting. Cool. All right, well, I think we can just leave it there. We don't have to go into anything else. Let me see if I forgot anything. So we talked about how to move the camera. We're not going to worry about beveling right now. Yeah, I think we'll get into all this stuff on Wednesday. So the main things to take away are the lock camera to view and unlock it so you don't accidentally move it. That's classic. and yeah, duplicating stuff, editing stuff, moving it around. You're not trying to get a perfect representation of it. So we can kind of look at this more in the traditional gray box view. If we go to material preview and or rendered. Oh yeah, so I'll show you guys on next week when we come back how to do an HDRI, which is a high dynamic range image, to use that for lighting to create kind of a really cool, nice lighting source for this. So it doesn't look, this looks pretty awful. We can't really see it, you know. And so you can kind of see it. It looks kind of cool, like a night scene or something. So if we wanted to, this is because we don't have much light. We just have this one little light in the scene, but I could duplicate that light and move it around and move it back here. So you can start making kind of cool lighting stuff if you want to play around with that. You know, you can play with the intensity over here and the light properties menu, but don't worry about it too much because we're gonna do some. I'll show you some really cheap tricks for getting nice lighting things going on without having to muss or fuss. But if you're one of those people that's like, oh, excellent lighting, then knock yourself out. I'm not one of those people. I'm always like, lighting, really? Even though I love lighting, it's cool. It just it's hard. All right, so we'll leave it there, and I can hang out. We're a little early, but that's cool, and I won't overburden you with things. So any questions about what's due for Wednesday? I'll put a turn in for your, all we need is a link from your Figma. And that way you can just use your Figma document as kind of the turn in for whenever we're doing presentations. So that's kind of convenient. So you just need to have the link to it. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Technical questions? Anything that wasn't clear?
So literally all that's due on Wednesday is like a gray box mock-up of what we're going to make, like a sketch like this?
Yeah, and include your reference material. So basically you would have something here. I'll actually show you what you would have.
Okay.
So you would have, let me go back here, and we can do something like this. And let's go back to this. So I might just go, okay, let me screen cap this. Like that. And then go here and say save to. Can I copy and paste it? No, I think I'm going to just go desktop.
And so just put like a screenshot of that in Figma?
Yeah, so now I take this and go back to Figma and kind of just copy and paste it. I would organize this stuff, but I might say, well, you know, here are some of the things I was looking at, and this was my white box shot, and then this was the thing that I was looking at. So we can kind of look at them. So if I pull these over here. And as presentation software, you can drag this thing called a frame around these. And then you can actually use these to present with. You don't have to do this. It's okay. Just to show you how that works. If I go up here to the play button, it'll open a new tab and it'll have this ready to present. You don't have to do this. Sometimes this works great. Sometimes it doesn't. Like, I don't know why the scale is so messed up right now, but you can use this like presentation software. So if you play around with it, you can get it to work right. I'm not sure why that's all zoomed in like that, but must have been something I did. But don't worry about it. You can just show it like this. You don't have to use frames. And just as long as you can kind of zoom in on stuff. So yeah, so that's about it. And then our next step will be to start to build out some of these things, but based on what your layout is. And like I said, you can make a wholly original layout. You don't have to copy someone else's, but it's just that you can use it as a starting point, as a reference to get a decent kind of complete layout. And then like, you know, we could take something like this and we don't have to make like a period. Oh, you're not seeing what I'm saying. We could take this, we don't have to duplicate all of these architectural details. We could use this, but to build out like a science fiction scene, like a future like spaceport. We could say, oh, this is the spaceport, you know, and then this is where the, you know, or this could be something in, you know, dinosaur times, you know, or it could be a contemporary prison complex or something. Like we don't have to make the imagery the same. In fact, it's almost cooler if we don't, you know, especially if we're looking at some like a video game that's already been built out. We can use it for a different purpose. So it's just to give us the idea of the rough block-in concept. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. That helped.
Sure thing. Good deal. Other questions? Yeah, background forward. That's totally cool. Yeah, you can work. You don't have to go foreground to background. That's totally fine. Yeah, however you want to do it. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I'll hang out for a bit if people have other questions. Otherwise, have an excellent long weekend. Stay safe. Get some rest as well as do some good work. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you all on Wednesday next. Okay. All right. Cheerio. And I'll post these up. The link, the link is on the Moodle site now. So the YouTube links are all, should be updated and stuff should be getting updated there. So all the past lectures and stuff should be there. So, okay. All right. I'll catch you guys later. But I'll hang out if people have questions.
I think I have the hang of Blender now.